The manila folder sat untouched on the mahogany surface. March 23, 1944. Berlin's Reich Ministry building housed secrets that morning. Secrets that would destroy everything the Nazi leadership believed about their war. Albert Speer stared at the classified documents. The markings read, "For Minister Only." His hands trembled slightly as morning light filtered through tall windows. Outside, work crews cleared debris from another bombing raid. The city bore fresh scars from Allied attacks. Inside that folder lay intelligence reports, reports that would shatter illusions, reports that revealed the impossible truth about American industrial might. The numbers seemed like fiction. German aircraft production for 1944 would reach 39,000 planes. Speer had presented this figure to Hitler with genuine pride. The Führer had praised these achievements. Germany was performing miracles despite constant bombing, but the Americans were building 96,000 aircraft that same year, nearly 2.5 times Germany's total output. And that was just the beginning of the revelation. The folder contained intercepted communications, neutral country reports, reconnaissance photographs, evidence from multiple sources, all pointing to the same impossible conclusion. America wasn't struggling to produce these numbers, they were doing it easily, while simultaneously manufacturing ships, tanks, trucks, ammunition, all in quantities that defied understanding. The war's outcome was already decided. Not by generals or battles, but by factory production lines running day and night across the American continent. Speer had earned his reputation as Germany's miracle worker. February 8, 1942 marked his rise to power. Fritz Tott's mysterious plane crash had created the opportunity. Speer seized control of armaments production with ruthless efficiency. His reforms revolutionized German manufacturing. Single-shift specialized production replaced inefficient methods. Standardized components simplified assembly. The variety of aircraft types dropped from 42 to just 5 main models. He battled competing Nazi bureaucracies, streamlined decision-making processes, implemented mass production techniques borrowed, ironically, from 1920s American automotive studies. By late 1943, the results spoke for themselves. Ammunition production had increased 5-fold, tank production had quadrupled, aircraft manufacturing had tripled. Despite Allied bombers turning German cities to rubble, weapons kept flowing to the Wehrmacht. Speer's dispersed production system seemed to prove that organization could overcome material disadvantages. Hitler called him the genius of organization. Goebbels praised him as the man who made miracles possible. At 39, he was the Reich's youngest minister, the architect who became an armaments wizard. But early 1944 brought disturbing intelligence reports. Numbers that seemed impossible. Claims that appeared absurd. America was supposedly a nation of jazz musicians and Hollywood actors, a country weakened by racial mixing and democratic inefficiency. How could such a place produce weapons in quantities that dwarfed the German Reich's total output? January 1944 marked the beginning of Speer's awakening. Luftwaffe intelligence intercepted American production reports, documents meant for Soviet allies through Lend-Lease channels. General Adolf Galland would later share these findings in a series of meetings. The Americans claimed 9,000 Fu, 113 aircraft produced in December 1943 alone, nearly matching Germany's entire quarterly production in just 1 month. Speer initially dismissed these figures as propaganda. Disinformation meant to demoralize German intelligence services, but supporting evidence arrived from multiple sources. Reconnaissance photographs from neutral Swedish businessmen, images showing endless rows of B-24 Liberators at Willow Run, Michigan. The Swedish source was an engineer. He had toured the facility before America entered the war. His detailed observations were shocking. The factory stretches 2/3 of a mile long, a quarter-mile wide. By April 1944, they achieved production of one completed 4-engine bomber every 63 minutes. 2 9-hour shifts, 6 days per week. Simple mathematics revealed nearly 650 bombers monthly. From this single facility alone, Speer examined the photographs with a magnifying glass. The images showed completed aircraft lined up in perfect rows. But more importantly, they revealed the assembly process itself. A revolutionary production line where planes moved through fixed stations. Workers remained stationary, while aircraft progressed past them. Henry Ford's automotive revolution applied to aviation manufacturing. February 1944 brought the Abwehr's absorption into the SS. Speer relied increasingly on alternative intelligence sources. The task of assessing American production fell to various departments within his ministry, working with remnants of military intelligence networks. Swiss businessmen maintained commercial relationships with American companies. They provided production statistics from annual reports. Spanish diplomats in Washington forwarded American newspapers, publications that brazenly published production figures without censorship. Portuguese merchants reported American shipping observed in Atlantic ports. The most valuable intelligence came from Japanese naval attachés in Berlin. Throughout 1944, Japanese intelligence shared information gathered from embassies in Argentina and Chile. American aircraft were arriving in massive quantities at South American training bases, 500 aircraft per month to Brazil alone. Purely for training purposes, not combat operations. Swedish intelligence proved particularly detailed. Sweden's ball-bearing giant SKF maintained factories in America. Neutral Swedish executives received tours of American plants. These executives, maintaining Sweden's precarious neutrality, shared information with both sides. One report described the Pratt & Whitney engine plant in East Hartford, Connecticut. Production of 1,000 engines weekly. Testing facilities running continuously around the clock. The factory employed 40,000 workers, including 11,000 women. Parking lots contained approximately 15,000 automobiles, workers' personal vehicles. March 1944 found Speer in his office spreading intelligence reports across his conference table. His deputy for fighter production, Karl Otto Sauer, stood beside him, calculator in hand, verifying the figures. "Let us assume these numbers are exaggerated by 50% for propaganda purposes," Speer said. "Even then," Sauer replied, "they would be producing 48,000 aircraft annually, still more than our total production." But evidence suggested no exaggeration whatsoever. American newspapers obtained through neutral embassies openly published production statistics. The New York Times reported Boeing's B-29 program without any censorship. Time magazine featured articles about Willow Run with detailed production numbers. Life magazine published photographs of assembly lines, visible serial numbers that German intelligence could actually track and verify. The revelation was profound and disturbing. In Germany, production figures were closely guarded state secrets. Workers signed death oaths regarding information security. Factory locations were hidden from public knowledge. America published their production statistics in magazines sold at newsstands. The intelligence file on Willow Run became central to understanding American industrial capacity. Built by Ford Motor Company in 1941, the facility represented everything German production was not. The main building covered 3.5 million square feet, larger than the entire Messerschmitt complex at Augsburg. Swedish engineer Pierre Jakobsson toured Willow Run in late 1943. His detailed report was devastating. The facility employs 42,000 workers, including 35% women. Workers remain stationary, while aircraft move past them on automated conveyor systems. Average learning time for new workers is 3 weeks. By April 1944, production reaches 453 aircraft in 468 hours. One B-24 every 63 minutes. Speer compared this to German aircraft production methods. The Messerschmitt Bf-109, Germany's primary fighter, required 4,000 man-hours to produce. Workers were skilled craftsmen who assembled entire sections individually. Training time averaged 6 months minimum. At Willow Run, each B-24 required approximately 125 to 95 man-hours in final assembly. Despite being a 4-engine bomber 5 times the weight of a Bf-109, it required less than 1/3 the labor input. Throughout 1944, Speer attended regular conferences with Hitler at various headquarters. Each time he presented American production intelligence, Hitler's response remained consistently predictable: denial and accusations of defeatism. At a May conference, Speer presented photographic evidence from Willow Run, production statistics from neutral sources, documentary proof of American industrial capacity. Hitler studied the materials briefly. "Propaganda," he declared. "The Americans wish us to believe these fantasies. No nation can produce aircraft like automobiles." "But that is precisely what they are doing," Speer argued. "They have applied automotive mass production to aircraft manufacturing." "These reports are Jewish lies spread by Roosevelt," Hitler insisted, ending the discussion. But other members of the leadership were beginning to accept reality. Field Marshal Erhard Milch, State Secretary in the Aviation Ministry, privately acknowledged to Speer the truth. "The numbers are correct, aren't they?" "I believe they are actually conservative," Speer replied. "Then we have already lost." Back in Berlin, Speer conducted detailed comparative production analysis. According to what would later become the United States Strategic Bombing Survey, the numbers told an irrefutable story. German aircraft production for 1944 peaked in July with 4,219 total aircraft. Peak for fighters came in September with 3,375 units. Annual total reached 39,807 of all types. This included 25,285 fighters, 5,468 bombers, and 9,054 other aircraft types. American aircraft production for 1944 averaged 8,000 monthly. Annual total reached 96,000 units, including approximately 16,000 4-engine bombers, 35,000 fighters, and 45,000 trainers, transports, and other types. But raw numbers revealed only part of the devastating story. Each American B-24 Liberator possessed striking power equivalent to 2 German medium bombers, while requiring proportionally less fuel, crew, and maintenance per ton of bombs delivered. The qualitative gap magnified the quantitative disparity exponentially. Spring 1944 intelligence revealed another dimension of American superiority. Reports from Argentine sources detailed American aluminum production at 420,000 tons annually. German aluminum production, despite controlling Norwegian hydroelectric resources, reached only 245,000 tons. Oil statistics proved even more sobering. American refineries produced 4.7 million barrels daily. Germany, dependent on synthetic fuel from coal conversion, produced equivalent to 24,000 barrels daily. The Americans consumed more fuel in training flights than the entire Luftwaffe used in combat operations. Japanese military attachés in Berlin shared a revealing observation. "Your submarines sink American tankers carrying 100,000 barrels of oil. They don't reduce consumption. They simply order another tanker. This is not war, as we understand it. It is industrial arithmetic." Beyond production numbers, Intelligence revealed technological innovations German industry couldn't match. At Wright Field in Ohio, Americans tested aircraft engines in altitude chambers, simulating conditions at 50,000 feet. Germany's highest altitude test facility reached only 30,000 feet. American factories used statistical quality control methods. Random sampling and statistical analysis replaced individual inspection. This dramatically increased production speed while maintaining consistent quality. The Norden bomb site, analyzed from crashed B-17 wreckage, demonstrated precision engineering exceeding German mass production capabilities. Dr. Ernst Heinkel, the renowned aircraft designer, confided to associates his growing despair. "We are artisans building aircraft one by one. They are industrialists manufacturing them by the thousands. We cannot compete with such mathematics." Intelligence about American shipbuilding provided additional proof of industrial superiority. The United States built 2,710 Liberty ships between 1941 and 1945. The famous SS Robert E. Peary had been constructed in 4 days, 15 hours, as a publicity stunt. Regular production averaged 42 days from keel laying to launch. During 1943 to 1944, American shipyards were launching ships at rates approaching 3 every 2 days during peak production periods. German U-boat commanders operating in the Atlantic reported convoy after convoy of these vessels. The strategic implications were crystal clear. America could replace losses faster than Germany could inflict them. May 1944, intelligence about the Boeing B-29 Superfortress caused particular consternation among German leadership. Swedish businessmen reported visiting Boeing plants where these superbombers were in active production. The specifications seemed impossible to achieve. Wingspan of 141 feet, 3 inches. Maximum weight of 140,000 pounds when fully loaded. Bomb load capacity of 20,000 pounds. Range of 3,700 miles. Pressurized cabin for high-altitude flight. Remote-controlled gun turrets. Production had begun in 1943, with 3,970 B-29s ultimately built across 4 separate facilities. Germany's most advanced bomber project, the Heinkel Ho 277, remained a paper design. The B-29 was in mass production with hundreds already delivered to training units. When presented with photographic evidence, Goering reportedly declared, "Nobody can build such aircraft in quantity." But Galland and other realistic officers knew better. As Galland would write in his memoirs, this was not bluff. It was industrial reality. Captured American airmen inadvertently provided intelligence confirming production superiority. Their interrogations revealed another devastating gap in pilot training. American pilots received 250 to 400 hours of flight training before combat assignment. Primary training lasted 60 hours. Basic training required 70 hours. Advanced and transition training demanded 75 to 170 additional hours. German fighter pilots in 1944 entered combat with an average of 112 hours total, reduced from 160 hours earlier that year. By 1945, this would drop to just 50 hours. Fuel shortages meant many never flew their assigned aircraft until their first combat mission. Technical Sergeant William Barnes, a B-17 crew chief captured after his bomber was shot down, provided revealing information during interrogation. "We were losing about 60 bombers a month over Germany. Boeing alone was building 140 monthly. We had more bombers than trained crews." June 1944's D-Day invasion demonstrated American material superiority on an unprecedented scale. Over 5,000 ships participated. 11,000 aircraft provided support. 150,000 men landed in the first wave alone. Hitler insisted this represented America's maximum effort. Unsustainable production surge that would soon collapse. Speer knew better. Intelligence from Argentina reported American shipyards launching new Essex-class aircraft carriers regularly. Each carrier required 27,000 tons of steel and carried 90 to 100 aircraft. Germany's single aircraft carrier, Graf Zeppelin, remained incomplete after 6 years of construction attempts. Dr. Karl Krauch, chairman of IG Farben's supervisory board, reported through Swiss contacts disturbing information. Americans produced 800,000 tons of synthetic rubber annually versus Germany's 120,000 tons. They have solved the boutadiene production problem that limited our output. They share technology freely. We guard secrets jealously. They multiply efficiency through cooperation. July 1944 brought reconnaissance photographs of Detroit's industrial complex. The concentration of manufacturing exceeded the entire Ruhr Valley. Willow Run covered 1,600 acres. Ford River Rouge encompassed 2,000 acres. Chrysler Tank Arsenal sprawled across 1,200 acres. General Motors facilities combined covered 5,000-plus acres. Photo interpreters identified hundreds of large factory buildings. Thousands of vehicles filled parking lots. Dozens of power plants and rail yards handled over 1,000 freight cars daily. August 1944 marked both the peak of German aircraft production and Speer's complete acceptance of defeat's inevitability. A comprehensive intelligence summary presented the stark reality. American production from January to June 1944 totaled 48,000 aircraft, on pace for 96,000 annually, approximately 14,000 tanks, over 300,000 military trucks, hundreds of naval vessels, 5.75 million tons of merchant shipping. German production for the same period managed 9,800 aircraft, 9,700 tanks and assault guns, 47,000 military trucks, 193 U-boats, negligible merchant shipping. American production was accelerating rapidly. German production under strategic bombing was beginning its inevitable decline. The oil campaign had reduced fuel production catastrophically. The transportation plan created bottlenecks that left finished weapons stranded at factories. By late 1944, fragmentary intelligence about a massive American project began reaching German intelligence services. While the atomic nature remained secret, the industrial scale was evident. Swiss sources described facilities consuming enormous amounts of electricity. Oak Ridge, Tennessee, was using 1/7 of all United States electrical production. Peak demand reached 298 kilowatts. The Americans were devoting resources equivalent to Germany's entire V-weapon program to a single project whose nature remained completely unknown. September 1944 analysis revealed that the gulf between German and American production went beyond mere numbers. It was fundamentally philosophical. American production emphasized simplification for mass production, interchangeability between different manufacturers, statistical quality control methods, specialized worker training. German production emphasized complex designs, showcasing engineering excellence, unique parts for each manufacturer, individual craftsmanship standards, workers trained as skilled generalists. As Speer would later reflect, "We built aircraft as works of engineering art. They manufactured them as industrial products. Our Me-262 jet fighter was technically superior, but we could build only 20 monthly. They would have redesigned it for mass production and built 200. By November 1944, even Göring could no longer deny American production superiority. The Battle of Leyte Gulf demonstrated American naval production capabilities. They deployed more aircraft carriers than Germany possessed destroyers. At a Luftwaffe conference, Galland presented sobering statistics to assembled officers. American fighters outnumbered Luftwaffe fighters 15-1 over Germany. American pilots arrived with 400 flight hours of training. German pilots had 50 hours. American fighters had reliable engines lasting 400 hours between major overhauls. German engines managed 25 hours maximum. "We faced not one air force, but several," Galland explained to stunned listeners. "The 8th Air Force alone has 3,000 heavy bombers. Each American Air Force is larger than our entire Luftwaffe." December 1944's Battle of the Bulge provided final proof of American industrial supremacy. Despite achieving complete tactical surprise, German forces were overwhelmed by the American response. Within days, American forces moved 250,000 men, 50,000 vehicles, 500,000 tons of supplies to contain the breakthrough. Captured American supply depots revealed abundance beyond German comprehension. More supplies in a single depot than entire German divisions possessed. January 1945 brought Speer's most comprehensive assessment of the situation. Swiss banking contacts provided American war bond advertisements openly stating production figures. "Your war bonds have built 317 aircraft, 1940 to 1945, 86,000 tanks, 2.6 million trucks, 6,500 naval vessels, 2,710 Liberty ships." These numbers, published in magazines to encourage bond purchases, would have been state secrets in Germany. America advertised them publicly. On January 30th, the anniversary of Hitler's rise to power, Speer attended what would be his last major conference, attempting to convince Hitler to seek terms. "Mein Führer, we must face reality. The Americans produce in 1 month what we produce in a year." Hitler's response revealed complete detachment from reality. "Wars are won by will, not production statistics." On March 18, 1945, Speer submitted a memorandum to Hitler arguing that Germany's economy would collapse within 4 to 8 weeks. The following day, March 19th, Hitler issued his infamous Nero Decree, ordering destruction of all German infrastructure. Speer's subsequent response on March 29th argued against this destruction. "The enemy's superiority in armaments and industrial capacity has reached proportions that render further resistance meaningless. The Americans can replace in weeks what we destroy. We cannot rebuild in decades." Hitler accused him of treason and defeatism. But Speer had moved beyond caring about Hitler's approval. The production statistics had convinced him that Germany's defeat was mathematically certain since at least mid-1944. April 1945 brought American forces approaching Berlin. Intelligence continued arriving about American production capabilities. A captured Fortune magazine revealed the automobile industry's complete conversion to war production. The entire American automobile industry, which had produced 4.8 million vehicles in 1941, had converted to military production, manufacturing millions of military vehicles, thousands of aircraft, tens of thousands of tanks. As the Third Reich collapsed around them, the production statistics told an irrefutable story of American industrial dominance. Total United States war production, verified figures, 317 military aircraft from 1940 to 1945, 86,000 tanks, 2.6 million military trucks, 639,000 jeeps, 257,000 artillery pieces, 2.6 million machine guns, 6,500 hard naval vessels, 2,710 Liberty ships. German war production from 1939 to 1945, 95,000 aircraft, 63 Hyde 800 tanks and self-propelled guns, 345,000 military trucks, 61,000 artillery pieces, 1.2 million machine guns, 171 U-boats. The ratios were overwhelming and decisive. 3.2 to 1 in aircraft, 1.35 to 1 in tanks, despite Germany's longer production period, 7.5 to 1 in trucks. These figures excluded Lend-Lease production sent to Allies. After the war, the United States Strategic Bombing Survey confirmed that German intelligence had actually underestimated American production capabilities. The survey noted, German intelligence estimates of U.S. aircraft production for 1944 predicted only 22,440 aircraft. Actual production was 96,318, an underestimation of 330%. While Speer's memoirs, Inside the Third Reich, focused primarily on his own achievements and relationship with Hitler, in post-war interrogations and interviews, he acknowledged the overwhelming nature of American industrial capacity. In a 1970s interview, he reflected, "By early 1944, I knew with certainty that Germany would lose the war." American production of 96,000 aircraft in 1944 was not a surge. It was sustainable indefinitely. Other German leaders corroborated this recognition in their testimonies. Field Marshal Erhard Milch testified, "When I learned America produced 9,000 aircraft in a single month, I knew the war was lost." Admiral Karl Dönitz testified, "When intelligence reported Americans building escort carriers faster than we could build submarines, I knew the Battle of the Atlantic was lost." General Adolf Galland wrote, "Each American pilot we shot down was replaced by 2 more, better trained. We faced not an enemy, but an avalanche." American technological advantages multiplied their numerical superiority exponentially. The proximity fuse increased anti-aircraft effectiveness by 700%. America produced 22 million units. Germany never developed the technology successfully. American radar development proceeded on multiple parallel tracks simultaneously, mass-producing thousands of units. German radar remained handcrafted in hundreds of units. The turbocharger gave American fighters decisive altitude advantages. General Electric produced 300,000 during the war. German attempts to copy captured units failed consistently. They lacked the metallurgy for mass production. The economic disparity made German victory mathematically impossible. In 1944, America's gross national product reached $210 billion versus Germany's $45 billion. America devoted 45% to war production. Germany allocated 65%. Yet American war production exceeded Germany's total gross national product. As historians would later note, America could lose Germany's entire annual production in a single battle and continue fighting without pause. They could afford waste that would have crippled the German economy completely. America trained 435,000 pilots during the war versus Germany's 57,000. By 1945, American pilots were engaging German pilots who had never fired their weapons in training. Luftwaffe General Johannes Steinhoff testified, "We sent children to fight professionals. It was not combat, but execution." The knowledge of American production superiority created a psychological crisis within German leadership. The crisis progressed through predictable stages: denial, rationalization, desperation, delusion, and finally, acceptance. This progression affected military strategy directly, leading to increasingly desperate gambles that hastened defeat. The greatest irony was that American production achieved what German ideology claimed was impossible. Racial integration and gender equality in industry proved more efficient than Aryan supremacy. American factories employed diverse workforces voluntarily, achieving more than German forced labor systems. In his final years, Speer reflected on the lesson learned too late. "We confused military prowess with industrial power. We believed racial ideology could overcome numerical reality. We thought will could defeat production. Every assumption proved false." When he learned they produced 96,000 aircraft in 1944, Speer knew not just that Germany would lose. He knew they had already lost. The war continued for another year, but the outcome had already been determined by factory production lines. World War II was not won on the beaches of Normandy or in the ruins of Berlin. It was won in the factories of Detroit, the shipyards of California, the aircraft plants of Seattle. It was won by workers who never saw combat, but whose industrial might made victory inevitable. Germany challenged the world's greatest industrial power with ideology and courage. They learned that in modern warfare, production is strategy, logistics is tactics, industrial capacity is victory. The Americans understood this principle from the beginning. Germans learned it too late to matter. Speer's recognition of American production superiority marked the moment when rational German leadership understood the war's outcome was predetermined. The 96,000 aircraft produced in 1944 were not just machines. They were manifestations of an industrial system achieving unprecedented efficiency. Each B-24 rolling off Willow Run's assembly line every 63 minutes represented systematic superiority. Democratic industrial organization over totalitarian control. The production war proved that in modern industrial warfare, the factory floor is as decisive as any battlefield. When Albert Speer saw that America produced 96,000 aircraft in 1944, he saw the future. A future where German defeat was mathematically certain. The transformation of American industry from consumer goods to weapons of war represented the greatest concentration of industrial power in human history. Against this reality, the Third Reich never stood a chance. The story of Albert Speer's recognition of American production superiority is ultimately a testament to the decisive power of industrial democracy. In 1944, that nation was undeniably, overwhelmingly, and insurmountably the United States of America. The 96,000 aircraft produced that year were not just symbols of American might. They were mathematical proof that totalitarian ambition would always fall before democratic industrial capacity.